Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. The goal of this podcast today is to get you to answer a few questions. One of the challenges that I run into when we engage with schools at the Culture Lab is that everyone wants to raise more money, everyone wants to mobilize resources, and all leaders want to grow their institution. But in this episode today, I'm going to take you through a set of 6 questions, 6 key questions to answer. And if we don't have the answers to all of these questions, then it's not your time to fundraise. And there's going to be some internal work that has to happen before you engage with your team, before you begin to launch campaigns, and before you begin to go out in the community and try to mobilize resources. Now, in all of these specific questions, our company, the Culture Lab, helps you strategize and be able to answer these questions more effectively. And this is what happens when we engage with individuals, because we're able to come in and help them assess what's going on within their school, how to assess these questions, but how to position the answers to these questions to have a strong campaign. So by the end of this episode, what I want you to walk away with is not just awareness, but also the first step towards your fundraising journey so that you can begin to hit the goals that your school, your students, and your community deserves. Now, take out your pencil, take out your pen, and let's get rolling. Now, question number one is probably the most important question. And all of these questions are in order how you need to approach answering these questions. Question number one is, why did we begin? It's challenging for us to be able to talk about future aspirations and future goals and development, and even attract future donors if we don't understand the history of what got us to where we are today. I worked at a classical institution in Charlotte, North Carolina called Bonnie Cone Classical School as a director and a former board member. And one of the biggest challenges in working there is that we would talk to students on a daily basis, and we would ask them, who is Bonnie Cone? And do you know how this school got their name? And students didn't even know who Bonnie Cone was, and that she was a trailblazer in Charlotte and practically ran and led the University of North Carolina at Charlotte before it was a university, and the impact that she had. That's an issue, because what I believe happens is if our students aren't aware, then it's going to be challenging for our community, if they run into our students, for them to be able to be as prideful and have a sense of pride and confidence to share the great things about their school in the same way that we would be focusing on doing that as leaders in this developmental process. So it's important for us to first understand why we began. What is the story on why you began your school? How did the school get their name? Who were the original founding members, and what was the purpose of the school? Now, when you start thinking of these sub-questions under why did we begin, then the real question that you need to understand how to answer is, what problem were you going out to solve? And it's important because at the beginning of your pitch presentation, and we're going to talk about this in different episodes, in your pitch presentation, why this episode is so important, because once you get the answers to all of these questions, now you can build these answers into a presentation that allows you to present in front of various donors and various key individuals and leaders so that you can be able to sell your specific institution and be able to garner resources and begin that process of building relationships. So the first question is, why did we begin? But under that question, I want you to answer 4 questions. Number one is, what is the story on why we began our school? What is the story? What's the backstory? Who were the founding members? And why are those founding members important? At a school that I was a board member at, one of the founding members was actually connected to the name, the person that we named the school after. So there's a history there. The next sub-question is, what was the purpose? What was the problem that you were going off to solve, was the 4th sub-question. What problem were you going out to solve? We recognized in the city of Detroit or the city of Charlotte or the city of Atlanta that students were experiencing these things. And we rounded up a group of individuals to work together to be able to solve this problem in this way. And the reason we wanted to go off and solve this problem in this way is because our future vision was this. That sounds much better than Bonnie Cone Classical Academy was founded in 2020 with the mission of this. No, when you're telling a story, just like any movie that you watch, any book that you read, or any story that someone tells you, it allows you to be able to connect with another individual. And as a part of this development process, you want to be able to connect with people at the level that they're at. They want to be able to connect with the school story, and our hearts connect. And then when your hearts connect, now people's wallets or checkbooks or company resources open up and they're routed towards your organization. So question number one is answering the question of why did we begin? Question number two, where are you now? Where are we now as a school? And I think this is challenging for a lot of leaders to be able to answer because this question takes a lot of transparency. And like all of the different questions that we have in this episode, there's 4 sub questions that are going to help you understand how to answer the second question of where are we now? The first sub question is, what are we doing better than any other school? Now, I don't want you to just look at your buildings. I don't want you to just look at your facilities. I don't want you to just look at your potentially curriculum. I want you to quantify how you would actually measure better. What does better look like for you? One of the biggest challenges that we've often recognized in education as a whole, especially in America, is us being able to quantify what does quality education look like. And at the multitude of schools, whether you're at a public school, private school, charter school, homeschool, Montessori school, whatever school you are at, understanding how to define and measure what quality education looks like is challenging. But that serves as your unique selling proposition as a school. How do you define quality? And how are you doing whatever it is that you've defined better than other schools out there that are doing it similarly to you? The next sub question under where are we now is, what are some challenges that we need help in solving? One of the challenges that we recognize in coming in a school in Charlotte that we were engaging with is we were not connected with the community. So one of the ways that we got connected to the community is by leveraging nonprofit organizations in the community and then building a service learning program so that we can get our names out there. Now, you're probably thinking of, well, we can do that, but do we have the capacity or the time? Just imagine 30 of your students once a month going to a local nonprofit organization and volunteering, building that into your curriculum as a part of your specific lesson plans or your curriculum that you're using within your school, a service component. Now you're documenting and tracking the amount of hours that those students get for your school. You multiply that by the amount of students, and now you're continuing to grow upon that every single month. That's a service learning program, and that's very low level description of what we did. Now, but just think about how every time you come there, you're taking pictures, and those pictures are shared with the organization that you're working with. And now they're marketing your pictures. Your school is marketing your pictures. And now people are aware of that organization, but then also people are aware of your school based upon that organization marketing you. This allows you, as a part of this development and fundraising process, to get your name out there, but then also have other people marketing what you're doing. Now, it's a 10-year or a 10-month school year. So just imagine you go into 10 different organizations on a monthly basis. Now you have 10 organizations marketing what your school is doing in the community to serve not just students, not just education, but serve other people. That is an opportunity for you to be able to solve a problem, serve a need, and develop a community. So as a part of what are some challenges that you need support with, you have to be transparent, because now we can leverage community partners, we can leverage small businesses, we can leverage our parents, we can leverage government officials to be able to help us in this effort of solving those problems. The beautiful thing about this is now you have people that are bought into your mission, bought into your vision, bought into what you're doing, so that now when you go back to them and ask them for support financially, or ask them for volunteer engagement, or ask them for specific resources for this specific project or initiative that you have, you've already built a relationship with them. All right, subtopic 3. What problems are we solving as a school? As a school, you are not just there to share textbooks or share curriculum or books with students. We're here to solve problems. We're here to help students learn how to solve problems, but we're here to help students understand how this education is actually solving problems in our communities. And that's why it's always important to have a service component that you can be able to leverage as a part of your developmental efforts, because it shows that, hey, we're doing more than just educating students in the classroom. What more are you doing outside of the classroom that are equipping students? And I'm not just talking about field trips that are fun and students are going to aquariums or amusement parks. I'm talking about what is the real work that your students are doing outside of education that is cutting edge in a sense. All right, subtopic 4 is, what would a complete stranger say about us? And here's why this is important. If you don't know, then that probably means that you're not talking to enough people. And another way to look at this is, if you don't know, then that probably means that there's not enough people that know about your school. And I want you to just go a potential 1 to 3 mile radius around your school and go to different places and just ask them if they've heard about your school and what they've heard about your school. And now when you start to hear these things, is it in alignment with what you know about your school or where your school is going? And what this will allow you to do is start to focus and widen your net so that you can create the narrative, so that you can create various copy and stories and various traction and engagement in these specific local areas, so that they can, even if someone comes into Food Lion or someone comes into Target and they're asking about a school, your school is the one that's top of mind. All right, question number 3. What have you produced? What have you produced? And there's 3 ways that I want you to look at this, and these are our subtopics under this question. What wins have your students achieved? Have you had a certain set of students go to Ivy League institutions? Have you had certain athletes go Division I? Have you had students that competed in a national spelling bee or coded something for a major organization? Have you had students that have received certain awards, or they achieved a certain amount of volunteering hours or service hours? What have your students achieved? The next perspective is, what have your educators achieved? Have you had educators that have published certain works, that are nationally board certified, that have had the opportunity to speak at various conferences around the country? What have your educators done? Have they been noticed, or have they achieved various things in the media? Have they went viral for certain things? And then the third question is, who are our leaders and what are they doing? Now, I smile with this one, because if your leaders aren't leading, they shouldn't be leaders. And I look at this from a college perspective. When we look at the more elite institutions, when I look at just business schools, the Harvard business schools, the Chicago business schools, Brown University, these major institutions out there, their professors were probably former business owners, executives of companies, probably exited from companies, or even their professors in engineering work for NASA part-time, or they have experience. The problem that I have with K-12 education is that our educators, our leaders in these spaces, don't have leadership experience outside of schools. What books have your leaders written? How have they been published? Are they speaking at national conferences? Do they have consulting arms? Are they on specific boards? Are they invited to speak at certain forums? Are they thought leaders in a specific space? Because how are we developing thought leaders in the classroom if our leaders aren't thought leaders in their space? This is important, because now when we're able to have leaders that are producing, educators that are producing, and students that are producing, that is much more marketable than the opposite. We have the opportunity to work with a school in Minnesota, one of the top performing private schools in Minnesota, with the Culture Lab. And it was so cool because I had the opportunity of meeting their head of school, connecting with her, had amazing conversations in the initial conversations before we started working together. And one of the coolest things is that I went online to YouTube and I saw this TED video of this woman talking about education in a specific realm of education. And I'm like, oh my God, that is the same person that we're engaging with. And it's not just the fact that she had over 500,000 views on this, or 500,000 views on this specific video. It's the fact that she is clearly showcasing her thought leadership, but not just her thought leadership, it bleeds over into what they're doing as a school. And when you walk into that building and when you meet the individuals in that building, these people are coming from corporate America. The development team at this institution came from corporate, and they're real deal. They're experts. They're high-level experts, and that's why they are exceeding and excelling across the board in all that they're doing. They're not just bringing in homeschool moms and dads to then lead schools. They're not just bringing in willy-nilly off the street with no experience or just 10 years of classroom experience to lead schools. Now, this may be controversial for some educators out here. And if it is, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go get some experience. Publish that book, publish that article, go speak on that forum, that panel, that conference, and then start to publicize that work. Because when we start to get into the developmental and fundraising realm, this will allow us to have a school that is much more marketable. And it will allow donors to see that you all are doing great work and have teams of people that are committed to actually growing and fostering excellence at this institution. Now, let's get to the fourth question. Where are we going? Now that we understand where we came from, now that we understand where we are, now that we understand what we've produced, the fourth question is, where are we going? And as I look at this question, what will help you understand how to answer this question is, what does the vision look like in the future? Where are we working to accomplish, and what are some things that we're working to be innovative in? One of the challenges that we have to overcome in education is being last in all things. Just how industry, and what I mean by industry is corporate America, companies that are really doing great things in the private and public sector. When I look at these organizations, innovation is paramount in how they grow their organizations. It's a part of their DNA. It's a part of their blood. But as schools, how are we being innovative? What are we doing that's different than just traditional education? That it's different in how we schedule students' class schedules. It's different than how we approach education. Our hiring practices may be different. Our bonus structure is different. Our service model is different. How are you all different than just traditional educational schooling? What are you doing that is exciting in the future? And I want you to really think about that. Not, oh, we're looking to just grow our school by 5,000 students. We're just looking to do, no, what are things that I will get excited about as a donor that you're doing, and I want to be a part of that mission, or I want to lead that charge with you? And these are things that I just want you to consider. And as you're jotting down notes and as you're considering this and thinking through all of these various topics, your vision of where you're going is where your donors are trying to meet you. Yes, teaching them where you were and what you produced, that will get them in the door. But teaching them where you're going and showcasing that and selling that, that's what's going to keep them advocating and supporting you and stewarding with you through your future. All right, let's get to question number 5. Question number 5 is critical. Who is our superstar? I'm going to pause here for a second. And I want you to think about, who is that one student that you're wanting other students to aspire to become? Who is that one educator that is doing truly cutting edge things in their classroom? Who is that leader that has a framework that you would want to teach to other leaders or school leaders or principals out there? That is your superstar. There's leaders that I've worked with in the past that I was just baffled to how bad they were. And I know you probably thought I was going to take it the opposite way, but there's leaders that I'm sure you've even probably worked with that were in leadership positions that were not leaders. There were educators that I'm sure you probably have worked with that I don't know how these people were hired. And there were students that I'm sure you've probably taught or engaged or mentored that I don't know what went on in the household. But that gives us an opportunity as educators, as developmental experts, to create something different. Who was that one student that excelled at your school, that was bought into your framework, that was bought into your model? And how can we duplicate that success, but then also market that success? Who is that educator that is just doing amazingly different things, but is growing their students, supporting their students, and showcasing their work? How can you write articles or lead them to continue to do it more so that we can showcase that work? Who is the leader that you would get behind? How can we support that leader so that they can continue to do that work and then tell other people about that leader's work? These are the things that are important when we start thinking about marketing, when we start thinking about attracting stakeholders, when we start thinking about creating awareness. And then the last question is, why are we the best? And there's only one subtopic under this. It's in one sentence. In one sentence, why should I invest in this school? When we're able to ask that one question, and in one sentence, why should I invest in this school? To answer that question requires us to understand, why did we begin? To answer that question, we have to understand, where are we now? To answer that question, we have to understand, what have we produced? To answer that question, we have to understand, where are we going? To answer that question, we have to understand, who is our superstar? And when we answer those first 5 questions, it allows us to answer the question, why are we the best? Before you go off and build a fundraising team, before you go off and begin marketing, schedule some time with the Culture Lab. And when you do, before that call that we have together, answer these 6 questions. It's another episode of the Contagious Culture podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and we'll see you all next episode.